Probably the biggest question, the most exciting thing happening in the space right now that everyone's talking about is 3i Atlas.
Everyone should remember 1 light year is the distance that a light goes at 186,000 miles every second for a whole year. So every second of a year, that's the distance. That's what a light year is. It's not a measure, it's a measurement of distance, not time. It was to see how the media and the public could react and how much hysteria in the White House and in Congress they could create. Look, this is the oldest game in the intelligence playbook. There are some extraordinary things that are being seen that everyone says, oh, it's got to be alien, it's extraterrestrial. No, it's not.
Dr. Greer, it's so good to see you. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. Good to see you too.
I know I'm fired up and everyone at Gaia is fired up for your event coming up in November 8th and 9th. We are so excited to have you back on campus.
Great. Yeah, no, it'd be great to be there. It's always a wonderful crowd and very supportive venue for what we're doing, not only on disclosure, but on the science of consciousness and the whole spectrum of the cosmology. Yeah, and we're going to do a deep dive into that part of it as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to jump into some really hot topic questions right now in the world of disclosure. But before we do that, people listening, today is the last day of the early bird special for the event. So if you really want to go, click on the link in the description below, okay? So let's jump right in, Dr. Greer. I'm excited for this.
Sure.
So probably the biggest question, the most exciting thing happening in the space right now that everyone's talking about is 3i Atlas. I'm hearing from Avi Loeb that it could be potentially something extraordinary. I'm hearing from NASA that no, it's just a comet. And am I hearing from all sorts of different types of people on the internet that it could be something like an alien mothership or some sort of extraterrestrial race? We need clarity, Dr. Greer. Can you please provide some clarity on what you think 3i Atlas is or what you're hearing?
Well, first of all, it'd be unlikely to be a comet. It'd be more likely to be a rogue asteroid rock. Comets are more gaseous. And anyway, so as far as it being anything under intelligent control, I haven't seen any data to suggest that. Now, if it does have artificial components to it, which I haven't seen, then there's also other possibilities. For example, there have been civilizations in our solar system and outside our solar system for millions of years. This could be the equivalent of some space junk from a long time ago that's drifted in. There are a lot of possibilities that I can think of. Of course, the internet, the hysteria, and Avi Loeb jump immediately to some of the more sensational ones, although he's backtracked on that, saying that he was saying theoretically it could be this, which is a sort of a psyop. So my understanding of the cell that Avi Loeb is part of, the UFO connected cell group that he's connected to is a very prominent disinformation, gaslighting operation. So I'm pretty sure that anything from those quarters, I would look at very skeptically, particularly when it begins to track towards a threat from outer space. Remember,
right.
This is what Wernher von Braun on his deathbed told my dear friend Carol Rosen, who was his right-hand assistant in 1974, that over a period of decades, they would roll out this alien threat to sort of unite the world around sort of a totalitarian, militaristic dystopia that would be looking at anything from space as a threat that we should fight, which would then build military and intelligence spending. And that whole scheme was concocted in about 1953, 54. And we have documents in our archive to prove it. If you go to just dpiarchive.com, it's the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive. There's terabytes of data in there. We put everything in, except sensitive stuff that had names and sources that we can't disclose. And it clearly goes through what that whole objective has been, all the way tracking for the last 70 years, since the early to mid 50s. So I think that I would look at it I look at these things very skeptically, particularly when it becomes an internet zeitgeist of hysteria and we're being invaded. And this is what the drone stuff, right? And you remember last year at this time,
yep.
and all the drone stuff, and it was a psyop. All of those were man-made. We know who were doing it. I know the head of a team that was doing reconnaissance of them out of Lockheed Skunk Works. And it was to see how the media and the public would react and how much hysteria in the White House and in Congress they could create. Look, this is the oldest game in the intelligence playbook. And of course, the problem with, let's just say, retail ufology and pop culture is that there's not any depth of intelligence analysis. And as you know, I've been briefing people like the director of the CIA since 1993. So I come to this from a very, I don't know if you say skeptical, wary. I'm very wary of things that have that spin on it, because I know that that's been the long-term agenda. So this Atlas, comet, asteroid, whatever it is, I can't disprove, you can't prove a negative. I can't disprove that it's not of artificial manufacture. But even if it was to be one, remember, any interplanetary civilization is not going to be drifting along at that speed. It isn't going to happen. They're going to be moving in hyperspace. They're going to be going, like teleportation, be going from point A to B like this, right? Quantum entanglement, but on a macro scale with a whole spacecraft. I'm going to describe for Gaia when I'm there, how these technologies work and how they're related to quantum entanglement, but also the conscious field and consciousness. There's a whole nexus where all this comes together. And the term I use is transdimensional interstellar, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're interstellar, but they're transiting different dimensions. And we're going to do a deep unpacking of that for everyone at Gaia in November. So my intention is to get clarity on the cosmology and then understand it. But if you understand the physics, I know, my uncle was Northrop Grumman his whole life, and he worked on the lunar module team that put the first man on the moon. And, when you're not talking about things drifting along at 100,000 miles per hour or 50,000 miles per hour. You're talking about things that are beyond the speed of light, what we call superluminal travel. So any legitimate interstellar craft has that capability, because otherwise to go from point A to B, even from our closest, star system, would take thousands or millions of years at something less than the speed of light. Now, when you're talking about this object drifting along at a few tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of miles per hour, that sounds fast, but from an interstellar, the distances, everyone should remember 1 light year is the distance that a light goes at 186,000 miles every second for a whole year. So every second of a year, that's the distance. That's what a light year is. It's not a measure. It's a measurement of distance, not time. So a light year is that amount of distance. So even our closest stellar neighbors would be, at that speed, it'd be ludicrous that they could ever get here. So this is the whole problem. And anyone who's an astrophysicist or someone at Harvard who doesn't know that, I'd be very worried about their intellectual acumen.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarity. I feel the same way you do, but I can't put it in the words you just put it. Thank you. Okay. That's what I needed. I need to give that to all my friends and be like, this is exactly what I think is going on. But a follow-up question to that is, when you talk about the threat-based narrative, has specifically the idea of an alien mothership coming to get us been talked about in these programs before?
Well, they create that. So in other words, let's unwind this a little bit so that we get some sort of foundation for everyone listening.
Please.
We have people on our team who have been able to confirm from being in classified projects, as well as in the CIA and NSA vaults where the secret documents are kept, that we mastered gravity control and propulsion in October of 1954. So I was born in June of 1955. I'm 70. So that's 71 years ago, right? So when you look at this, 71 years ago, we mastered gravity control. Before that, we had gravity propulsion systems, but they weren't stable. This is why you see in the early 50s and late 40s, some old home movies of man-made UFOs that flutter like a leaf. Those were our experimental ones, not the extraterrestrial.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yes. So, I hate to say it. I mean, it's the science of this does matter, even though we live in a very anti-science time. And there's very little valid science going on in ufology, as you know. So the problem becomes if they have had, these covert programs have had that capability since October of 54 to have stable electrogravitic gravity control craft, and they have. That means that by now, 71 years later, there are some extraordinary things that are being seen that everyone says, oh, it's got to be alien, it's extraterrestrial. No, it's not. It's from the Lockheed Skunk Works, it's Northrop Grumman, some of the very sophisticated ones that are partially living bio-nano machines or Raytheon. We know where they are. We know how they've been used in clandestine operations. This is being looked at by some very senior people in the U.S. government now as criminal activity, because I have said since the 90s that this is the world's largest RICO, racketeering influence corrupt organization running this. And the RICO law was passed in 1970 to take apart the mafia. So now it's got to be used to take apart this cabal of folks doing these things. But their plan was always to use the man-made platforms to deceive the public. Let's give a great example. Many of the triangular craft that you see, there are ones that are extraterrestrial. But what they did was reverse engineer that, and now there's a whole fleet of various sized man-made triangles that are from mainly Northrop Grumman and Raytheon. So this is how easy it is to deceive the public, but by extension, members of Congress, the president, whoever it is. So, what does it say? Knowledge is power. And the Vedas, Sanskrit says knowledge is the greatest purifier. So the knowledge of this is important, and the science of it's important, and this trajectory of technological evolution from the 40s and 50s to now is important. And without that information, it's sort of a very superficial, I saw this object. Well, yeah, but where did it come from? Was it actually an interstellar object? Was it something non-human? Or is it actually one of our covert programs setting up a sort of a psychological warfare operation, a psyop? And no one's asking these hard questions properly. And that's what we're trying to bring to light, because I can tell you at this point, knowing what I know that's going on behind the scenes, this whole area of secrecy is going to get disclosed. But if it gets disclosed deceptively, it'll lead straight to a catastrophe. So what we're trying to do is be sure it's being disclosed truthfully. And that's a very lonely space to be in, frankly, I'll speak personally, because most people either don't have that information or they're operatives that are deliberately deceiving members of the U.S. government and the media and the public. So this gets into a big, complicated problem here, where what I'm trying to do is assemble the whistleblowers who have that information on not only what's been done with extraterrestrial vehicles, but what we're doing with the man-made tech, high-tech, exotic technology that had been used to stage mutilations, abductions, big events, the whole drone scare. And now there's this thing coming in from space, this Atlas comet, whatever they're calling it. I don't think it's a comet, maybe. I think it's more likely to be a rogue asteroid. But whatever it is, the spin that's being put on it, the hysteria on the internet, the media, is very much looks to me like a psychological warfare operation.
Well, I agree with you. And speaking of whistleblowers, we just had a big, I would say, historic UAP hearing, the third one in 3 years. Mm-hmm. It seems significant to me. It seemed more that not necessarily the whistleblowers were bigger or more important or more interesting than years past, but the way Congress was kind of treating it and how they were talking about it. Speaking of your whistleblowers in the UAP hearing, what are you hearing? What's going to come next? What did you glean from the hearing, and what is your team working on now?
Well, none of the hearings have had anything substantive yet. Now, none of them. I mean, if you go back to I would ask your viewers to go back to 2001, look in our archive at the National Press Club event. We had 22 whistleblowers, any one of which were extremely 10 times more consequential than anyone that's been appearing at these hearings. And that's by design. the people who have intercepted the leadership of that committee, Luna, for example, who I briefed years ago, they have been intercepted by folks who are feeding them minor, they're not even whistleblowers, they're minor witnesses, and they're minor people who really, many of them, like Mike Gold, who I know, doesn't know anything about the subject and admits he doesn't. Meanwhile, I turned over a list of about 50 very high value targets who need to be subpoenaed that they won't call. So there's something very odd going on here. And I've been in private meetings up on Capitol Hill in the Senate and the House, and I have brought in many of these high value whistleblowers who have actually worked on the craft or been involved in operations involving both ET and man-made craft, and who are direct firsthand, not secondhand, firsthand witnesses. And curiously, they're not calling any of them. They're not even asking them to appear. They have been blocked. So the real whistleblowers and the real hearings are being blocked by people who have deliberately misinformed and disinformed, actually, people like Miss Luna and others. Now I'm working with other members of the Senate and House who are not being so easily deceived. But the dog and pony show that you're calling these hearings, it's sound and fury signifying nothing, to quote Shakespeare. But now, the night before that hearing, I was at a private gathering with some of them and a few of the members to Congress and got to speak to them. And so there's two tracks going on. There's the thing you're seeing in the public, and there's what's really going on that's significant behind the scenes. And to the extent I can talk about that at Gaia Sphere, I'm going to go into a deep dive into that, because I think the public curious about this need to know how this is operating and what's actually going on. That is very consequential. And I can't talk too specifically, but I can tell you that it's at a very high level here and abroad, and it's very serious, and there's enormous progress. I started this project in 1990, so that was 35 years ago. I was 35, and now I'm so literally half my biological life. And what I've found is that what's happened in the last 2 years, it's mostly behind the scenes, is unlike anything I've seen in 35 years. But
so real progress. You're confident that we're making real progress on disclosure?
Oh yeah, but you're not going to see it on, a hearing like that. Not yet. Now, what we're trying to do is be sure that there's enough evidence that comes out asymmetrically from whistleblowers and evidence that it would force real hearings where the key players would be subpoenaed, and people who have been in these operations and in these underground facilities who we have on our team would be subpoenaed and be under oath. Now, we have them. If you go to our archive, you'll see we have 750 some whistleblowers.
And they're willing to talk. If they're subpoenaed, only if they get subpoenaed.
Some are willing to talk right now, and they still will not be allowed to at these hearings. But the ones who need a subpoena, they'll be subpoenaed. Same thing with law enforcement. And, if a federal agent comes up to you and asks you about something and you lie, that's a felony. So we have people at the very senior level of law enforcement that we've handed everything off to. And those guys are running fast and running hard. So no, this is enormous progress. Unbelievable progress is going on.
If you like this video and you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out the next video on our channel.